speak about 5-MeO-DMT, I also like to call it Pandora's box, and I say, look, if you don't want to open the box, do not take this medicine. And because there's no going back once you've had 5-MeO-DMT. And it is so far beyond any of the other psychedelics that many of us who have worked with it, who have experienced it, really put it in a category all on its own. And like NN-DMT is kind of down here. 5-MeO is beyond the roof. I mean, it's that much stronger. This is also what is found in the venom of the Sonoran desert toad. So that's, anyway, I want to let Jeff talk because he's the scientist. I was just the subject. So let's bring Jeff on. Yeah, so the question was, what dose did I take? And here's the thing, is I don't have a scale, I don't ever really measure it. What I do is, I had access, it comes in various forms, and as the pure synthetic molecule, it can either be free base or HCl, which is a salt form. Free base is really good for vaporizing, but the HCl form doesn't really vaporize that well. So what I do is I put it on top of mullein, which is a non-psychoactive herb. It's just a smoky base, and then it's just like a white crystalline powder, and I put that on top of it. And like I mentioned before I showed this, that I try to go a little bit in the moderate dose range, because you can see me doing those movements. Now, like I said, you can watch the other video of me that just says 5-MeO-DMT full energetic embodiment. And I'm not still at all. I'm moving and I'm making all kinds of weird kinds of noises, and it's all done in this symmetrical way. But and that's, for me, that's my natural reaction to 5-MeO-DMT. And I didn't want to do that for this, so I tried to keep it a little bit low, and I wasn't taking the really biggest hits. But somewhat ironically, see the way that it works, if you're working with the HCl form and it's on top of plant material, that it actually melts down to the plant material. And when I got down to that last hit that I took, I thought, okay, well, there's barely nothing, there's nothing left in here. That actually was the strongest hit. It was at the very end, and so that was the most powerful moment for me. And just a bit about the crying, just so you know, that none of that was personal. It's not that I was feeling sad. It's that when I go into these states, for me, it's a very non-dual state, where it's this sense of, and my hands, I am feeling everyone, I am feeling everything, and I can feel the sorrow and struggle of humanity through my hands, directly in my heart. And that's what that was about. That wasn't like, oh, I'm sad about something. It's that, yeah, I know it's hard, I can feel that, but it's still beautiful. But anyway, I do want to let Jeff talk, so let's bring Jeff.
I lost my clicker, so I'll just have to stand here and push buttons. Hey, how about a big round of applause to Mark for making this yeah, putting himself on YouTube and being vulnerable in that way. I had this shirt done. This is a tie-dye artistic representation of Martin's brain from the experience. So, yeah.
Before you get into your popcorn, yeah, I love the video, by the way. Since you have already the video track, and it's got a time base, you can match it up to the time base of the EEG and look at those segments that have him moving and all of that, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to say is, in my work, I've had the good fortune of being able to map the same person under 5-MeO-DMT on different occasions, different days and everything, and the EEG and all the changes look the same. So there is a constant sort of pharmacological, effect that's consistent.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, that was one of the things I added in here. So, those of you, I mentioned this yesterday, but Juan just published a book chapter with scanning people's brains with 5-MeO specifically in various forms. And it just came out, just
last year,
yeah. So very cool, and so really that's a lot of the sort of, that's, I mean, really the only published work that I'm aware of with 5-MeO looking at brain imaging. So that's awesome, and he's here. How cool is that? So you can bug him and ask him all about that. So just really quick, kind of just so that you have sort of the format of what we were doing. So we did the baseline, you know, we kind of saw that in the video. So we just measured, you know, it was probably 5 minutes of him just sitting there doing nothing. So we had sort of a base of like, well, what's your brain up to when you're not using 5-MeO? And it was interesting because in this instance, he hadn't worked with that medicine for 1.5 years. So that's a pretty big hiatus in terms of, so we had that kind of a baseline. And then, you know, he mentioned that he did a warm-up session where he just kind of went at it. So we did that first, then we took a little bit of a break. Then we did the second session where we hooked him back up, recorded, that's what you just saw. And then we waited a little bit after that. So after the video stopped, Mark kind of chilled out for a few minutes. He laid down, you know, 10 minutes or so. And then we got another recording, kind of a post recording. So I just wanted to share just a little bit of kind of a summary. Obviously, I haven't broken it down entirely the way that I still have to do. Actually, we just did this not that long ago. So I still want to go back in and break it down into tiny little segments, but I'll show you what I have done. So this is looking at Martin's brain so beforehand, compared to during the session. Okay, so this is a comparison of him to himself, and it's showing differences. The differences between baseline with the 5-MeO. What I did was, you saw that he took 6 hits, and I was marking down every time he took a hit. So I took a time stamp of about, I forget what it was, about 10 seconds, I think, after he took each hit. And I grabbed each one of those little 10-second segments. It's like, I want to know what his brain's doing immediately when he took those hits. So I took those 10-second segments as much as I could, because obviously some of it is not usable because of eye blinks and movement and things of that nature, and then used all of that. So that's what we're looking at right here. And so the cooler colors are going to show where things decreased significantly. So blues, where there's blue, things decreased. Where it's green, it's about the same as baseline. And when you start getting into brighter colors, the brighter it is, the more it increased while using the 5-MeO. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, good, excellent. So what you can see is that the delta, theta, so these are going from slow brain waves up to fast. And the slow brain waves, sorry, I forget you guys this way. The slow brain waves decreased pretty significantly, delta, theta, alpha. And you can see it a little bit in these images. You'll see it more in a minute. But it really was kind of dominant on that right side. I don't know if you saw it in the, you can see it actually, especially around the 5th and 6th hit that he took. When they showed the computer scan where I was kind of watching this live, it was very split. Like, the right side was blue, and the left side was just kind of like hanging out and doing okay. And so that actually did show up when we kind of did the full analysis. And then look at the gamma, you can see that is a very, so we had a significant increase, a big increase of gamma, and very much on that right side. So this is something that's really interesting that I think is going to be important to look at later, like, why was it so symmetric, so asymmetrical in this case, so lateralized, that the right side was really the one kind of getting so much attention, both in a decrease of things and in an increase. As I was sitting there listening to kind of Martin talk in the video, it occurred to me, I wonder if some of that was in relation to the fact that we were filming, and there was a part of his brain during the experience that was aware that we were filming, and was thinking about elements of that, that you can't help it. And so I wonder, so I think, Martin's idea, maybe I could convince him to do this again, like he said in the film, without the camera.
Twist my arm.
So another thing that we did was we looked at, so I'm really interested in that gamma. And so looking at all the different electrodes on the head, and what was the percent of increase of gamma after taking the hits versus baseline. And you can see that there's a huge range, it's kind of all over, but some of them are as much as 157% increase of gamma immediately after taking a hit, 113%, 139%. And you can see that the biggest percentages tend to be located on that right side, although not entirely. If you look up at F7 up here, 111%. So it's kind of this scattering, but that's a pretty dramatic increase of gamma almost instantaneously. So that's kind of cool, and actually matches Juan's research. I'll show you some of his statistics here in just a minute. So you heard me at the beginning of that video talking about S. Loretta, which is it's a way to statistically look at deeper brain structures. So you can extrapolate from the surface down into deeper brain regions and see what's going on there. So this is still comparing Martin to himself, baseline versus when he was using, but I just pulled out specific brain regions. So here's we're looking at alpha 2, it's just a specific aspect of alpha. Here's the inferior parietal lobe. Look at the difference between the right and the left side. So they both dropped significantly, but the right side much more. And the reason that I highlighted that particular location, so you remember me saying that this is one of the pieces of the default mode network. So the default mode network, you've got kind of this big chunk here,